Hello, everyone, and welcome to Father, I Forgive You. Hopefully, you've been tuned in and watching other broadcast episodes. I found a couple of people who want to honor their father very specially by forgiving them. Well, we've actually already forgiven them, but we want to share our story of how we came to forgive our fathers. We have a myriad of reasons why we decided to forgive our fathers, but the main one is because we understand what it's like to not be free. And forgiveness frees both of you, whether they've gone on and crossed over by way of death, if they didn't call you, if you never met them, they're still forgiveness is for everyone. I know it's hard, I know it's difficult, but it can happen, and it can happen for you, and it will be the best decision that you have ever made in your life. So I am Brandy. If you don't know who I am, I'm an author, I'm a coach, I'm a publisher, and today I'm just your friend. Want to share with you. I won't share my story with you, but today Tracy McCauley, she's going to come to you in her very own special way to share how she became free enough to forgive her father so that she could move on with her life. And so, welcome to today's edition of Father, I Forgive You. Tracy, take it away.
I am so honored to be here, and I thank you, Brandy, for this opportunity, for this platform. It's going to bless lives of women all over this world, I believe. So I'm just honored to have this opportunity to be here. So my name is Tracy McCauley. As she said, I am an author, a published author. I'm also a motivational speaker. I am a coach. And I'm also a business owner. My business is Angels with Hope, where my mission is to help women understand their value, discover their uniqueness, and learn to love themselves. So I'm so passionate about helping women be the best version of themselves and walk in their God-given purpose. So my father was not in my life. I have to go back to the beginning. I was raised by my grandparents and my mother. My father and my mother, they actually split up whenever I was young. And so he was not a part of my life. So as a result of that, I felt abandoned. I felt forgotten. I felt unloved. I felt like I didn't matter. My father he was an alcoholic, and I found that out later on in my life, my adult life, that he was an alcoholic, and my mother was abused by him. And that was one of the reasons that they actually split up. But I still felt that there was something that I needed from him. I didn't feel like he loved me. And so I would see my father on and off 2 and 3 times at 2 and 3 times a year. Um, we didn't have a relationship where you sit down and you have a conversation. There was no time spent with my father. Um, I do remember one time he actually bought me, and I was thinking about this the other day as I was kind of preparing myself to speak. He bought me a Barbie doll. It was a Diana Ross, a African American Barbie doll, the Diana Ross doll. And that was the only thing that I can remember my father actually bought for me. And I was so excited because he had bought that Barbie doll for me. And it was precious because it was something, like I said, it was the only thing that he bought for me. So I held on to that. But as far as spending any quality time, I didn't have that with my father. I only had that moment where he bought that doll for me. And I wanted to be able to sit down and have a conversation with him, because what happened was I was looking, as I grew up, I looked for love in all the wrong places. And I ended up getting into an abusive relationship. I ended up feeling I had low self-esteem. I didn't love who I was. I had issues with how I looked. And all of those had a lot to do with, I think, with the fact that I didn't have my father in my life, because I thought that, a father was supposed to be somebody that showed you what type of man you were supposed to be with. But I didn't have that. I didn't have an example in my life of what a healthy relationship looked like. And I was raised by my grandparents, but their relationship was, it wasn't a healthy relationship. There was love in the household, there was protection in the household, but my father was not in that household. And so it caused me to feel less than, and it caused me just to feel like I didn't matter. And so I went, into these relationships, and with these abusive men that abused me, and that's how I was validated. I got my validation from these men that were unhealthy, these men that didn't love me and they didn't care about me, because again, I didn't have my father as a role model for me. I didn't have him in my life to show me what a good man was supposed to do. And so I really, really just went through life, feeling that way, feeling like, something is wrong with me because my father was not there. And this went on until my adult years. And so one of the things that really, really made me kind of stop and really think about what, think about my father and the relationship was when I got a phone call. I was working a part-time at this place, and I got a phone call from my mom, and she said that my father was in the hospital. And the first thing I thought was, okay, he's in the hospital. Okay, so what? I wasn't really planning to go. As a matter of fact, I didn't plan to go at all. But then the Lord spoke to me and told me I needed to go, that it was serious. And so I got off of work that day, and I went. I think it may have been the next day. I decided to go to the hospital to see my father. And what I saw was him dying. He was laying up there on the hospital bed with all of these tubes in him. And I was like, oh my God, it done something to me just to see my father. That was the first time that I had ever seen him like that. And it broke my heart. I mean, I had no words. At that moment, I really wanted to, I wanted to talk to him. I wanted to say, love you. I wanted to say all of these things that had been inside of me for all of these years, all of these emotions. I wanted to talk to him at that moment, but I never got the chance to do that. I never got the chance to talk to him, to say, ask him why. I never got the chance to just, say, I love you. I never heard him say it either, but I never got the chance to tell him that I loved him. And so he ended up dying. And it was actually the weekend after Father's Day that he passed. And I was devastated. I was devastated for a couple weeks, just thinking about what had happened. And it wasn't until I thought about that for years. And then whenever I decided to write my book, because I really didn't, even though I saw him there and I had these emotions going through the whole time that he was in the hospital, I didn't really think about the forgiveness piece of it. I didn't think about the fact that it was still something that needed to be done. I didn't really think about, because I was still in an abusive relationship, and I still had all these emotions about who I was, and the low self-esteem, and not really loving and caring about myself. And so it wasn't until I started writing my book, which was a lot of years later, probably about 5 or 6 years later, that I decided that I needed to start that healing process, and I needed to forgive my father. And so my book called Love Thyself, the second chapter of that book, it actually is entitled, Father, Where Are You? And every single time I started that chapter, I got emotional. I couldn't do it. I couldn't finish it. And it actually took me 7 years to finish writing my book. But it was extremely hard for me to get through that chapter, because all of these emotions came up about my father and about the lack of the relationship that I had with him. They came up. But finally, after prayer and after God talking to me about it, and after starting that healing process, because writing the book itself was healing to me, God allowed me to be able to finish that book. And he talked to me about what was going on, and he helped me be able to understand the forgiveness part, and that I needed to forgive my father because my father was doing only what he knew. So I couldn't continue to hold a grudge against my father because he was not in my life, because he didn't know how to be a father. And so God really spoke to me about that. And so I was able to forgive my father. And it wasn't for my father. The forgiveness wasn't for him, but the forgiveness was for me, because I needed the healing. I needed to forgive so that I could walk in the woman that God has for me. I needed that healing so that I could learn to love myself. I needed that healing so that I could understand that God loves me and that God is my heavenly Father. And so I was able to finish the book. I was able to finish that chapter. And I wrote a letter. And I want to read the letter of forgiveness that I wrote to my father. It reads, "Dear Father, I love you. I am so sad I didn't get to tell you how much I loved you when you were alive. I miss spending time with you. I hate I didn't get to know you the way I wanted to. I know you and Mama didn't get along very well, and I realized there was a need for you all to separate. But I am disappointed it happened and affected us negatively. We needed you to be there with us, spending time with us, helping us with our homework, going to the movies with us, and just talking with us about life. I needed you to show me what type of man I needed. So many years passed without a phone call or visit, and Mama felt the need to always overcompensate with buying gifts or allowing us to get away with things because she wanted us to have the best. Your absence from our lives affected us in ways that you couldn't even imagine. As I develop a more intimate relationship with God, my Heavenly Father, I forgive you for not being aware of what you are doing. I forgive you for not understanding how to parent your children, for not knowing how to be a father to your daughter and your son. I love you, and I pray you rest in peace. Love, your daughter, Tracy." So forgiveness is so important. It's so important. It's not just for the person that you're forgiving, but forgiveness is for you so that you can be the woman God has for you. So you can be the woman that He has purpose for you. So thank you so much for this opportunity again, Brandy, for just giving me the opportunity to share my story.
You're so welcome. And that was so heartfelt. Man, that letter, that pretty much wraps up how most people probably feel. And a lot of people don't know how to put into words why they're hurting. I'll tell you, she's a counselor, an actual legal, educated counselor. She's been to school, so So some people don't know when you say, "Well, I forgive them," but you don't put into words why. It's almost like too blanket of a statement. Well, why are you forgiving them? What is it? What part of you is hurting? And because you're a counselor, I know you know that's one of the pivotal questions that you have to ask yourself. Why did this hurt? Not just because me and you both went through a loss. I'll say, let's just say both of us got fired from a job. We both had a loss. I could just be like, I was glad the job is gone. I was ready to go anyway. And I could go on and live my life.
Right.
But if you get fired from, that might have been your favorite job. That might have been a job you prayed for. You just knew you had to have that job, and now they're firing you. So just because something happens to you doesn't mean that your reactions will be the same. That's why you have to address it and say, okay, this is why this hurt. because I gave my all, because I XYZ. So if you're watching this and you're like, oh, that was a great story, and you're getting ready to turn it off and go to another video, be careful to, or to take time to sit down and actually write, why do you want to forgive your father? Not just because we said you should, even though you should, because we're telling you, we know what it's like to be bound by emotions or by things that didn't happen the way we thought they should happen, all of those things. So let's go back to the beginning. Like I explained and before we were on camera, I'm going to ask you the questions that I know people are thinking. So we're going to go back to the beginning, and you started out with pretty much he wasn't in your life, period. And so you were born into, I don't say born into, but at some point you saw your mom and dad fighting. You said he abused her. So did you ever see the abuse, or you only heard about it?
I heard about it. It was
Okay.
later that my mom, now the only thing that I did see was I saw a knife, and that was it. I saw a knife, and then my mom, she yelled.
Mm-hmm.
But that was all that I saw. My mom is the one that actually told me that she had been abused, and she told me this because my mom, she travels with me when I've had the opportunity to go to different places to speak, share my story. She goes with me. She's my road dog, I like to say,
Amen.
my prayer warrior. But in hearing my story, she started revealing her experience with domestic violence as well. So that's when she actually told me that she had been abused by my father as well.
Wow. Do you know if one of the reasons she kept him away or kept him at bay was because she thought that he would maybe abuse you?
I don't know. I don't know if that never came up. So I'm not sure if that
Okay.
was her way of thinking or not. It could have been, but I'm not sure.
Did she ever, so did, as a kid, did you ever ask, why don't dad come around?
I don't remember ever asking that question. I just assumed that it was an adult thing. I don't know if I ever asked where he was.
Gotcha. So when you were like in elementary, middle, maybe even on to high school, did you ever become envious of the girls who did have their dad around?
I did. My cousins, they all had it was two of my cousins that we actually played together all the time, and both of them had their fathers, and I always was resentful because, I wondered, if they have their fathers, why don't I have my father with
Right.
me? So yeah, I was resentful of that. I felt really bad, and just, yeah, I didn't understand it.
How old were you when you started out in your quest to find him, just to at least have a conversation?
I was I was an adult. I was maybe in my 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or
And
maybe late 20s, maybe late 20s, early 30s.
was there anything that sparked that interest that hadn't previously been there as a child? Because now you're in mid-adulthood, you've moved
Mm-hmm.
on. You weren't married yet, right? Because you didn't get married till
Mm-hmm.
later.
Yeah, my late 30s whenever I got married. So yeah. But no, I think I just wanted to, because mom would say, she would say stuff like call your father or call your dad, things like that every now and then, but it never really happened. Well, I
How
did
were
call
you?
him a few times. I take that back. I did call him a few times. It was in after I had gotten older.
How
I
did you
called
find
him.
him?
I would hear through family members
Ah,
where he was, and they would give me his number because he moved around a lot. He had other families.
mm-hmm.
I found out later that I had two sisters that he had with previous women. So, but yeah, the family members, I would get the numbers from them and try to get in contact with them. And so a few times I did talk with them, and I actually, because I found this even after I started writing my book, I found a picture that we had taken together. It's the only picture that and this is the picture here, me and my
Oh,
father. The only picture that I have ever taken with him. And that picture, I keep that picture because, like I said, it's the only picture that I have of me and my father together. But yeah, so I would talk to him a few times. Like I said, it was not a whole lot. And I wanted to have a relationship with him, but I didn't know how.
Right, because at this point you're in your 30s, you've been told, well, you have an image of this. I'm not say evil. I don't know if you
Mhm.
saw it as evil at 30, but you're now dating men who are abusive. But that was normal to you. So did you see it as an evil or did you see it as normal?
It was normal because that's all I knew at that point.
Right.
I had, that was my normal, because I had been in a relationship. Oh, two, that was my second relationship that at that point, second abusive relationship, whenever I tried to, have those conversations with my father, or at least try to, call him. And so I didn't pursue it because, like I said, my normal was, men leave you, men, abuse you because
Right.
that's just what I knew. That's all I knew.
Right. And let's talk about being in the domestic violence field. This is something you see on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And unfortunate, not just the domestic violence part, but the reason behind it. And I remember I'll tell my story on a different video, so stay tuned, but I will interject this part. I remember showing up at the domestic violence shelter, and yes, I went through a domestic violence relationship. We actually, I'll tell you that part in a minute. I published her book and we have so much in common, not probably the parts we like to have in common, but when I was publishing her book, I was like, man, she's like my sister. Like we went through the exact same stuff. So I show up at the domestic violence shelter and not as a worker, I showed up to seek help. And the first question she asked me was, where is your father? I was like, ma'am, what does my father have to do with this? That was on the intake form. I was like, this say, where is my father? Y'all, what does that have? I was totally dumbfounded. But this was not the Brandy that y'all know. I mean, I was smart, but I wasn't I wasn't a counselor, I wasn't a life coach, any of those things. I was just trying to find myself at this point. I think I was 28, 29 years old, around the same age. And she said, well, your father has everything to do with this, and I'll explain. And basically she said, tell me, well, she said, well, first answer the question, because I still hadn't answered the question yet. I was like, she could tell that I was confused. I was like, my father's dead. And so that means he has nothing to do with this. So let's go to the next question. And the next question said, tell me about your last 5 relationships. Now I'm really confused. I'm like, what? Why y'all not asking about the man that put his hands on me? Where is that in here? And she said, well, you have to start from the root. And my book is called Dealing with the Hand I Was Dealt, and rightfully so. It talks about going to the root of a problem. And so she said, you're missing your father. And so what's happening is you keep dating people who have similarities to your father. And I was like, my father would have never put his hands on me. And she said, exactly. So explain to me what your last 5 relationships look like. Let me guess. They promised they'd never leave you. They'd always be there for you. They're going to be your number one protector. I was like, how did you know that? She said, well, this is why I'm in this industry. She said, because what happens is you're looking for what you don't have. Someone abandoned you. And so because they abandon you, you're trying to get people who promise to stick with you no matter what, whether they put their hands on you, whether they try to choke you out. That to you is love, because they're showing you, I love you so much that I'll exert all this anger and energy just to show you I love you. And to you, that makes sense, because you just told me your dad died and the reason why he died. Your stepfather, when he came, he was trying to touch on you. And so all you know is traumatic relationships. Why would a new traumatic relationship be any different? Man, I was dumbfounded.
Yeah.
I was like, all right, y'all can send me home now. I'm good.
Right.
And so I actually chose to stay in the shelter for the full 60 days. I could have
Mm-hmm.
left. I had somewhere. I could have stayed at a friend's house. I did not have to. I always tell people I put myself in there because I knew there was something that I needed that the world couldn't
Mm-hmm.
give me. I guess I could have went to a counselor, but it was like being in that atmosphere made me wake up
Mm-hmm.
because it just, these girls are coming in with gunshot wounds, or not, well, coming from the hospital, patched up gunshots, or hit up against side the head, just traumatic.
Yeah.
Mine was to the extent of I was allowing myself to be more mentally abused, emotionally abused, words. We had a lot of mouth battles. He would call me different names and stuff. And he did put his hands on me, and I don't take that lightly either. But to the extent that some women go through, my heart goes out to them, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I would have been on the first thing smoking, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that feels like. But I do
Mm-hmm.
know what abuse feels like because I dated different men. So when I wrote all my 5 men down, they all had put their hands on me sporadically. And so because it was just a little bit, it was like, oh, it's okay, because I knew trauma was normal to me. And
Right.
so back to what you were talking about you were at 30, you were dating men who were abusive, but that's all you knew that a man could be, because that was the image that had been painted for you. So
Exactly.
unless you find a new normal, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know what to do. So what triggered you to say, I gotta change? There's a change that needs to happen. Because that was mine. Like sitting in that domestic violence shelter, something triggered and said, you gotta change. You gotta change. Not, I'm not gonna go change all these men I've been dating. I
Mm-hmm.
gotta change and stop praying for a new man to show up, but I'm still showing up as the same old me. Somebody tweet that. You keep
Yeah.
asking for people to show up, new people to show up, but you're still presenting the same old you. So what was your moment of transition like when you said, Tracy, you got to get it together?
Mm-hmm. I think it was, for me, it was a slow process for me. I got out of the relationship, the abusive relationship, and actually God sent me my husband. Now, I
Mm-hmm.
don't say, I don't tell, women, I always say that a healing process needs to take place before you go into other relationships. But it didn't happen that way with me. And this is my little thing about, God, I think, God knew that I needed a change. I had been praying and praying, that things would get better. I had been praying for their strength to get out of the abusive relationship. I was in and out of church, and finally in a church that was talking to me about who I was, and it was starting to click with who God said I was, and I was really, really reading the word a little more. But it wasn't until um, I think I got into the relationship with my husband. I think that was the moment that it really clicked for me, because my husband showed me what love really was. So it wasn't until I got out of the abusive relationship by the strength of God, didn't go back, but there was many times that I wanted to go back to that relationship, but by the grace of God, I didn't. Excuse me. And so when I got into the relationship with my husband, and my husband showed me what a healthy relationship looked like, that was the moment that I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. This is what a healthy relationship was. And then at that moment, that was the thing that actually changed, that made me want to be the best person that I could be. It made me want to, forgive my father. It made me realize that my father didn't know how to be a father. He didn't know what that looked like. And but just being in that healthy environment, it gave me clarity, and it gave me that longing that I so desired, to be the best version of myself that I could be. And I got a more intimate relationship with God, and really understood who I was and who God created me to be. And so that right there was my, the thing that really, really made me want to be the best person. And it just showed me what healthy and unhealthy relationship, the difference in
Amen.
those was. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you said that about your husband being presented to you while you still were healing, because I think there's a fallacy that you have to be perfect before God will bring us someone. You were healed enough because you didn't turn him away. And God knew when to present him, because maybe if he would have sent him 5 years prior, you might have damaged that relationship. You might have sabotaged it with
Mhm.
your mouth. You might have been fearful. What is this love thing? I hear women say that all the time. You know what? Nice guys, I can't do that. They are you. Their trauma is so normal to them that they shun the love because they don't know. They're like, oh,
Mhm.
I don't know what that is. Or even in an argument, they tear people down so far that it didn't have to go that deep, but because your hurt runs so deep, you're tearing this man down with your words, when because but trauma is all you know. So she made a very valid and necessary point. Her husband showed her what love is, and to this day, they're just the happiest, beautiful couple that I've ever seen, next door
Thank
to
you.
myself. But just a beautiful couple. But I can imagine that it was kind of fearful walking into it because you didn't know. You like, why are you
Mhm.
being nice to me? Why are
Yes.
you buying me flowers? Like, what do you want? What do you want from me?
Mhm.
Like, I've done nothing to deserve this. So, and then I can imagine you may have been waiting for him to do something to you because those other guys had done stuff. So
Mhm.
talk to me about those early months in making that transition and know, okay, I know he's presenting himself as a good guy. I'm not sure if I can trust it yet. But what was that emotional release like? Because that's what it is. It's you crossing over from that fear, that anguish, that anxiety of, what if he's just like the rest of them? Okay, 5 months has passed, he hasn't hit me. Okay, 6 months has passed, he hasn't hit me. I don't know if that's how you felt. I'm just telling, that's how I would feel, and that's
Yeah.
how I have felt in the past. I would meet somebody new, and automatically my brain would go to, let me see how long this is going to last before I have to check him off the list. So
Right.
did you go through that?
Yeah, I did. We actually went to, before we got married, we went to premarital counseling, and
Good.
that was, we only went a few times, but I can remember the couple times that we went in the beginning. I was so shut up. I was so closed. My husband was just over here, holding the teddy bear and just kind of, opening up and talking. But I was like, this person sitting here didn't know how to express myself. I was fearful of just that whole communication piece, because I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to express myself, my emotions. I just, when they're all bottled up inside. So those couple sessions didn't go great. And so I went into that marriage. And I say it was nothing but God, because like you said earlier, he could have left. He could have just left me, because I was a messed up person. I
Yeah.
was so messed up from the trauma of the relationships that I had experienced. And yeah, I was fearful that, because we didn't, he told me early on that he was not the person that fights or argues or anything like that. He didn't like to argue about anything. So he never was a person that argued, and still is not until this day, 10 years later. But there was times, when we did have the conversations, that I kind of felt, okay, how's this gonna go? Because maybe it was going one way, and I was familiar with the negative part of, the relationship, or the negative part of relationships, the one that I had been in before. And there was times where the conversation would seem to go in a way that I felt would be, that the amygdala, the part of the brain that says that there's something going on.
Hmm.
There were times that I thought it was gonna go that way. Um, but I was just a mess. I was a mess. And it wasn't until I decided again that I wanted more. I wanted to be a bit better person. I had to do some work on myself. I had to do some work on myself. I thank God that my husband did not walk away, because he could have walked away, because I was a mess. But again, developing that intimate relationship with God, God, helped me. He healed me, and he really helped me get to the point where I was a better version of myself. And yeah, in the beginning, even when I got out the relationship, I was like, because my husband was kind of nerdy, kind of, sort of. And so I didn't really know. I was like, okay, because I'm used to like the thuggish type of men and,
Right.
those type, and my husband was like totally opposite. So I got out of the relationship thinking, okay, okay, so when I first met him, he first asked me out on a date. I was wondering, how is this going to go? What are we going to do? How's this date going to be? Just thinking that, it wasn't going to go right. It wasn't going to be an exciting date. But it turned out to be perfect, really. It turned
Oh,
out to be a wonderful time. He was opening the door. He was, picking me up in his car. He was driving, buying the dinner, because previous relationship, it was a total opposite.
right.
And so yeah,
Listen,
so
we could
that,
have a whole nother conference about that.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I had to do some changing, myself, some healing myself.
Amen.
So that, yeah.
What was the time frame between, you might have mentioned it, but just so I can make sure I got the time frame right. So your father passed away. So now you
Hmm.
have this healing work you have to do. Then your husband comes along. What
Hmm.
was the time frame between those two incidences?
That was hmm, probably 10 plus years after
Okay.
that.
So
Yeah.
in that gap of 10, we'll say 10 to 12
Oh, yeah.
years.
My father passed in 2002. And I met my husband in um, married, yeah, 2007. So maybe not quite 10 years.
Okay. So 2002 to 2007.
Yeah.
Okay. So 5 years, that's which is still long. So here you have now the only male figure, even though he wasn't what we deemed the best male figure. Did you
Hmm.
have any other male figures in your life at this point?
Um,
Pastor, mentor, anybody?
pastor, I had a pastor, and my grandfather, he was still alive during
Okay.
that point, but we didn't have I mean, we had a okay relationship.
So you still didn't have any, you had no viewpoint of what a positive male role model looked like. And do you have children?
I do. I have one daughter, and then my
Okay.
husband and I have kids together. So yeah,
Okay.
not kids
And
together, but between us,
between,
we
yeah.
have five. Yeah.
So what is your, and I tell, we did not talk about this off camera. So if she looks like she's trying to figure that, it's because she is, because I didn't tell her what I was going to answer. I want to be like, yeah, she didn't even know the answers to the question. Don't be judging people. Okay. She got to get herself together. Then if I ask something that's none of our business, you can wave me off and be like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that today. And I'll understand. So what's your daughter's relationship like with her father?
She, it's what's the word? It's not great.
Okay.
He kind of in and out of her life.
Now, was this one of the bad relationships,
Hmm.
abusive kind of?
Hmm.
Okay.
The first one, yeah.
So you see how we talked generational curses before we were online, and generational curses have to be stopped by someone. So now that her daughter knows, okay, this is not the way to go. She
Hmm.
has, yep, she has, that's the one with the little baby, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and she has a boy child. So even now, is his father in his life?
No, not
So
right
you see
now.
how these generational curses, they just keep going and going and going. And we have to be the
Hmm.
ones to say, you know what? We can't, because our fathers are already gone. But we can pass it on to our children. And if it misses our children, we can at least pass it to their children. At
Hmm.
some point, we have to stop this fatherless uh, DNA that keeps coming through. I don't believe this is God's original plan. I do believe that he's going to use it, because he says, Romans 8:28 says that all things work together for the good of those that love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So of course he knows that our population is fatherless. And I say our, the African American community has a more fatherless population than our counterparts, all of them. And so why is that? Why is our population, is it just that men have walked away? Is it just, I mean, I don't have an answer. So maybe you have one in your studies. I have no answer other than more of our Black men are in prison, which means that there's less men on the streets, not on the streets, but out of prison to take care of their children. But then the men that are not in prison are somehow imprisoned in their mind. And it's almost like a norm. I didn't want a baby, so I'm not going to take care of the baby. Where women, if we birth a child and decide to keep the child, we know that that becomes our number one responsibility. Where I believe that men who didn't want a child and weren't raised with take care of your responsibilities, wherever, I don't care if it's a lawnmower. If you buy a lawnmower, you take care of it because you bought it. You decided to go to the store and purchase it. Well, if you came through trauma, if your dad left you or your grandpa left your grandma, we talked about with Tracy, she saw abuse. I saw abuse. And so I became what I saw. So while I do put the blame on people as individuals, I also put the blame on society for not giving us a better example of leaders. We can even see our leadership right now. The fathers of our leadership brought us through trauma. So at what point are people going to stop birthing trauma? That's all we're doing. We're just generations of trauma, back to back to back. And so here we are trying to figure out, okay, you tell me to find a healthy relationship, but I don't know what that looks like. And so I went and worked at the domestic violence shelter. I was so honored. It was such a great experience, and it was also a painful experience. And this is your work that you do every day. I can imagine it is a painful experience to know that someone will rather return to their trauma than to go to a world that they don't know. And I say a world that they don't know, send them to another state. That was like the worst idea. You'd be like, okay, so we're going to send you to Georgia. I can't start over. Starting over was almost like poison, but that's freedom. We're going to send you to, with one person, we were going to send them to, it was like halfway, it was like Louisiana, so that she could get far enough away where she couldn't be found. She went home. She went back to her abuser. We had the hotel, we had the car. They were going to get her a run. I mean, and this is stuff that they don't usually do, but she was in such danger. They were going to get her a rental car so she could drive there. They were going to make sure that she had money, everything. And she said, no, I can't start over. My kids need their dad. And I was so heartbroken. I had to stop working there because my heart couldn't take it. I was like, I was trying to give everybody my book. I was like, okay, so can you go read this book and come back to me? And I would be crying after the intake. I would be crying like, man, so my heart goes out to you and anybody that faces this every day, because I went back and I was honored because I had stayed there. Now I'm working there. It's two different organizations, but still domestic violence related. And I can go back as a volunteer, but just to be in it every day was painful for me. And I didn't think it would be. I was so excited. I was like, yes, I want to work at a domestic violence shelter. And it was like, wow, like you would rather be in trauma, but it's because it's what's normal. And if we never understand, if we can't present a person a new normal and feel safe in that new normal, that's why when we met the new guy, we're like, okay, am I safe here? Because that's really what people are looking for, is not just the new normal, but they want to feel safe in their new normal. So there was something else. Oh yes. So let's go to love thyself. So here we are. And just to bring you up to speed in the story, her father passed away. She's now in between father gone, forgiving father, and now husband shows up. Where did you start writing the book in between that story? Was it before your husband or after him?
After my husband.
It was
Yeah,
after him.
after I met, yeah.
And I
Because
know the story, but I'm asking for the people who don't. I actually published her book. It is called Love Thyself, and I'll let her know. She'll give her credentials again at the end and where you can find it and all of that. But tell us what Love Thyself meant to you at this point in your life, at this stage in your life. You're writing a book called Love. Don't you love yourself already? I mean, what was going on for you to have to write? It's 200 pages, y'all. It's a good story. Pretty much the story you just told.
mhm.
But what was going on in your life that said, you know what, I need to pencil this in a book? What's in the book that we need to know about?
Well, it wasn't until I said earlier, it wasn't until I got into the relationship with my husband that I realized what healthy love was, healthy relationship, what it looked like. And so at that point, I wanted to, and I was working at part time, I think, or volunteering at a domestic violence shelter. And again, it's pretty much what you were saying, seeing all these women coming in and with going back and things like that, going back to their abusers. But it was something that about me that I wanted to get out to the world. It was something that I wanted to write so that women could see, they could hear my story, but it was also that healing part. I really didn't start loving myself until after I got into that healthy relationship with my husband. That's when I realized, all of these emotions that I had, all of these feelings that I had about, my father not being in my life. And I wanted to help other women that had been in similar situations with their fathers not being in their lives and being in an abusive relationship. And I wanted to write something to help these women and help them see my story and help them to understand that I went through a similar situation, but God was able to bring me out of that abusive relationship. So the book Love Thyself, I wrote it after I had gotten um, in out of the abusive relationship. I was in the relationship with my husband, healthy love, and I wanted to just write about my experience, and I talk about how my how I was raised. I talk about my relationship with my father or lack thereof. I talk about finding me, finding who I am through the Word of God, and I talked about how it blessed me, to develop that intimate relationship with God, and I talk about um, the positive affirmations that I had to say on a daily basis to help build my self-esteem, to help me view myself differently. And so that's pretty much what the book is about. And so, yeah, it took me 7 years again to write the book, but it was part of my healing. It's part of my healing process.
Amen. So when, for me, I guess listening to the story, it sounded like you had a moment where you're like, wow, my husband, I don't know if he was husband or boyfriend at the time, but he loves me more than I love me. Like, I'm gonna have to go back and, why do you talk? Hey, this man is talking nice to you and you talk negative to yourself. Like, how are you allowing another external human being to
Mhm.
talk, to treat you better than you treat yourself? And you have affirmations in the book that start with I am. Same in my book. As I just like, we have the
Yeah,
exact, and I wrote my book years ago. And
yeah.
so how did the I ams help you dig up that negative, those negative words and those negative emotions? And um, I won't put you on the spot unless you got a few you want to share, but how did those I ams, because I wrote down you had abandonment because your dad didn't spend any quality time with you. You had no healthy relationship to look at. You felt less than, had low self-esteem. So all of those are roots. We understand that this is not something that happened yesterday. This is, she looks like she's 30 something, but according to the timeline, she can't be 30. So, you know, this is over time, these seeds have been planted, and we understand that over time, a root system is going to go deep, deep, deep. If they came to cut a tree down, they would not cut the tree down from the root. They would have to stop. They would have to cut a little off the top and keep going until they got to the stump and then dig it out. So all of this that was going on in her life, her forgiving her dad cuts a little of the tree down, forgiving her mom if she had to do that, forgiving herself, forgiving God. Now this awesome man is here and she got a little of this tree left. Now she has to write this book to dig up all the rest of the stuff that's still in there. And so she has I ams in her book. What are some of the, if you have, again, if you don't have them off the dome, it's okay.
Yeah.
But what are some of the I ams that really stick close to you that you may even still say? I know I still say mine today, because after you deal with people of the world, they call you everything but a child of God. I have to go back to my I ams and remind myself, you are not what they called you. You know, so what are some of your I ams, and how powerful was that to do in your life in order to help you grow and love yourself, love thyself?
Yeah. I am beautiful. I am enough. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. You know, I can do all things, and this is not an I am, but that's one of the scriptures that I remember. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But one of the things, even with the I am, that I have several I ams in the book. One of the things that I actually do, in addition to saying the I ams, is looking in the mirror, doing that mirror work, saying I am beautiful, I am enough. You know, I am smart, I am intelligent, because along with my father abandoning me, or feeling like I was abandoned by my father, I also learned that I have a learning disability. And so when I say I am intelligent and I am smart, a lot of that comes from the fact that I thought I was stupid and I thought I was dumb for so many years because of my learning disability, my dyslexia. So those I ams, those are things that I try to say every day or every other day, sometimes several times a day. It just depends on how I'm feeling. But those I ams are so powerful and they are so important in order to build your self-esteem, in order for you to get to that place where you understand your worth and your value. So, yeah.
Amen. So what if I just wake up and be like, I am powerful? Am I going to be powerful that day? What if I don't feel powerful?
Yeah. And it's a process, just like the healing process. It's a process for you to, you have to say, you have to be intentional. When you're saying your I ams, those positive affirmations, you have to be intentional when you're saying those, which means that you have to do them on purpose. And you have to do them every day, and sometimes several times a day, in order for you to really, really get it in your head and really feel it. Because it's not just going to be those things that you can just, you know, say one time and think that, okay, that you're going to feel that way. No, you have to do it often.
Amen.
As long as it takes, as often as it takes, in order for you to feel better about yourself, in order for you to feel beautiful or whatever it is, you have to say it often. You have to be willing to do the work. You can't change if you're not willing to do the work that's needed in order for you to change.
Amen. And so my experience from the I ams, I didn't come up with it on my own, actually. What do we come up with on our own? You know, for me, I know when it's me talking to myself, and then I know when it's the Holy Spirit talking. And I was in a domestic violence shelter. Again, this whole experience was like one of those come to Jesus meetings. And he came to the shelter to see about me, but it was because that was my prayer when I arrived in the back seat of a patrol car. I'm out here. I wasn't a motivational speaker or anything like that, but I was an actress. I did have some notoriety in my life, and I was like, Brandy, what's wrong with you? Like, get yourself together. And I said, God, I don't really care about how I got here.
Mhm.
but I do want to know how I can get out of here and never come back. So I think we ask the wrong question sometimes. How did I get here? Let's not even discuss what we, I know how I got here, but what
Yeah.
do I need to do to get out of here and never be the old me? And so I was sitting in the shelter room, and if no one's ever seen a shelter, it's 4 bunk beds to one small room, as small as you can think, 4 bunk beds, and we had a dresser and a closet, and that was it, and a bathroom for
Mhm.
six people.
Mhm.
And so I said, I heard the Holy Spirit ask me, "Who are you?" And I said, "That's a dumb question. Why do I keep getting dumb questions all day?" But the
Mhm.
girl didn't ask me, "Where's your father?" Dumb question. Who about you? So I'm like, okay, where are we going with this one? So I said, well, you know who I am. I'm Brandy Hunt. That's my name, right? And so I, if God laughs, I'm pretty sure that was one of the moments when he laughed. And so he's like, okay, I know what your name is, but that's not who you are, because your name could be Tiffany. That wouldn't be who you are. Who are you? Who did I call you to be? Outside of what they said about you, you're no good parent. You, how could you allow this to happen to yourself? All of the things that the world tells you, you're the scum of the earth because you dated these
Mhm.
people. And I said, I don't know. I can't answer that. I didn't even have beautiful as one of the things that I could respond as, because I felt ugly. I felt like I had let my mother down. I felt, even though my father was not here anymore, I felt like I had let my family down. They told me not to marry him, of course, right? So I feel shame. So all these emotions and feelings are coming, and I don't know what to do about them other than I'm gonna just be a nobody and just be nobody. And so
Mhm.
I was glad, because I can't answer the question. And so God said, well, if you can't answer it, go in the Bible and tell me what I said, because I trump everything anyway. And so I went and I started reading through Psalms, because Psalms has a great start out of, God says that we're light of the salt of the earth. I'm like, what does that even mean? So, but I just wrote it down because it said, so I would
Mhm.
put, I am salt, I am light, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. What does that
Yeah.
even mean? At this point, I didn't know what any of this meant, but I just wrote it all down because I was like, okay, when I get past, I, I'm beautiful. What else? Okay, so if I think I'm pretty, but that's not going to help me change anything. And so, because I'm so logical, I know God would probably be in heaven shaking his head, like, can you just be do what I said do. So I'll be like, but that's not gonna help. But it helped me dig and find out, who did God call us. Like, even as women, it says, I have called you blessed. Your children will turn around and call you blessed. So I am blessed. So I went, he told me to write down 100 I ams.
Yeah.
And cause I started with 0. I just tell you the truth. I started with 0, and I ended up with 100. And I would stand in the mirror and say them every day. And do you know, I cried probably for the first 2 days, because I didn't feel like I was light. I felt like I was in a dark place, and I was dark. And God told me, he said, you are not, the I am isn't I am, because the I am doesn't necessarily mean I'm it right now at this very present moment. What it means is that I am, the one in heaven, has already declared who you are to the end of your life.
Mhm.
And so I can say I'm healed, because the word tells us, as it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. See, we're walking through a natural experience, and we think all of this is happening right now.
Mhm.
But according to the Bible, all of this has already happened. And I know
Mhm.
that sounds really crazy, but that's what it says. It says, as it is in heaven, is not going to be. It doesn't say it's going to be in heaven. It says, as it is in heaven, meaning it's already going on, or it's already happened, or it's
Mhm.
happening right now, and they're sending the signal down. Either way, author Brandy Hunt was at the shelter, even though it had not yet manifested. The
Wow.
millionaire Brandy Hunt is manifesting. Does that make sense? So I can wake up and say, I am a millionaire. Now I can't write the check yet. I can write a fake check, in faith. But when you stand in front of the mirror and go, I am healed, I am beautiful, I am
Mhm.
fearfully and wonderfully made, you may not feel it, but it will come to pass if you just keep walking in it. I had to even say, I am trustworthy.
Mhm.
Because I want people to be able to trust who I am. But what it also did for me, Tracy, was I would hear my voice when I get ready to make a bad decision. So I would even say, I am choosing good relationships. So,
Mm.
because I was choosing bad ones. So what happens is our brain starts hearing the positive more than the negative. And that's what starts coming into our life. See, we don't want to put the responsibility on ourselves. What you say, you know what? One day I woke up and said, you know what? I may just need to make some changes. You have to come to that realization. Watching this video, you may be thinking, you know what, man, I really do talk down to myself. And it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility. It wasn't her fault that her dad wasn't in her life. She did not choose that path. I did not choose the path of my father passing away at an early age. I was 12. She was 30 something. But at the end of the day, we were both abandoned by our father figures. And the next men that showed up didn't do so hot. And so at some point, those seeds became full grown trees. But we have to be the one to say, you know what? This isn't what I want. And if, not if, but since God gives me the power in my mouth, it tells us life and death is in the power of your tongue. I could tell Tracy all day she was amazing. But it's not until Tracy decides, remember, she said, my husband loved me. He showed me what love was, but I
Right.
still didn't really fully love myself. And it's because her brain had not yet connected to say, I, Tracy, I, Brandy, I love me. Regardless of if another human being loves you or not, you are lovable. That was on my list. I am lovable. Because up
Yeah.
until this point, we dated men who told us we weren't lovable, who told us we weren't worth it. You're not worth respect. I had to put that on my list. So whatever you feel you're not, put it on the list as I am, and eventually, I can't promise it tomorrow. She said this was a long process. This video has taken an hour, but I promise you this is not a long process. But the one thing that I was not a process for me was I started putting me first on purpose. So if someone would call me and I would, not want to do whatever it is they wanted me to do, maybe I had something already scheduled, I would purposely say no. Did it hurt? Absolutely, because I was used to people using me. I was used to people tugging on me. That was validation for me. But if helping you is hurting me, somebody got to go. And I'm not willing to be the sacrifice anymore. So at some point, love thyself has to become a true and living testament of your life. You have to say, you know what? Just because I love me doesn't mean I hate you. And I won't bring what's going on to the world right. I will bring it in. Let's talk about it. So just because I say I'm for Black Lives Matter doesn't mean I'm against any other life. But that's what's happening. And I'm using that because that's what's going on right now. But even when, like, if I call you and say, hey, Tracy, can you ride with me to Orangeburg tomorrow? And you're like, no, I have something to do. Oh, you don't love me then, because if you loved me, you would say yes. That is abuse. I cannot make her choose me, and I can't force her to feel, what is a good word? I can't force you to feel obligated to what my priority is. And that's what people want other people to do. You are your own priority. Yes, I want you, but I probably could have called you earlier than the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the mutual respect? So we could like have a whole nother webinar on just the I ams. So to wrap up the story, Tracy, she wanted to know, Father, where are you? I asked her if you had to give it, it's called Father, I Forgive You. But I said, if you had to name your segment, she said, Father, where are you? So for the duration of her life, she's been searching for the love of her father. She finally meets her father because she did not know him, and he passes away shortly after. And so now she has a tear in her soul that she has to come basically to grips with. Am I going to continue to live my life feeling abandoned, feeling worthless, feeling full of shame, or am I going to learn how to love myself and be everything that God has called for me to be? So I'll let you kind of wrap up the story and anything that you would like to say to those people who are watching today.
Thank you again for allowing me to have this opportunity to share my story. It's so important, again, for us to get to a place where we can forgive our Father for what he did not know. That's so important in order for us to live the best version of our lives that God has for us. My book, Love Thyself, is available on Amazon.com as well as BarnesandNoble.com. It is a short read, but it's a powerful, impactful book that talks about the strongholds that try to prevent me from walking in my calling. And so, again, I've enjoyed this experience, and I hope that someone is blessed as a result of what we've discussed today.
Amen. I know I've been blessed, so I can imagine that they are as well. And again, I published her book, Love Thyself. And if, as she mentioned it before, writing is healing, and writing the story and telling it to the world is even more powerful. So if you are a woman or man who wants to tell your story, any story of tragedy to triumph, I will be more than happy to walk you through those steps of how to write, how to get published, and let you explain to the world what you went through and how you overcame it. So Tracy, my last question for you. Well, I have two final questions. One of them is, if you had to call forgiveness something else, so it couldn't be called forgiveness, it has to be called something else, what would you call it?
Healing.
I like it. And that's, I put them on the spot, so I give people enough time, but it absolutely is healing. Forgiveness at the end of the day is not, you're not telling someone that what they did was right or that it was okay. You're releasing them from the, I would say, the debt that you believe is owed to you for the wrong that was done to you. The Bible tells us that God will vindicate us, and he will also make your enemies your footstool, and he will also, it's so much stuff that goes into freeing people. And I'm not saying that our parents are our footstools, so I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if other people who are not maybe parental, but maybe friends or foes or cousins or, whoever, bosses, if you release those people and they are your enemy, meaning they're against you, God's still going to use even that to promote you. Because what does a footstool do? What is a footstool?
Yeah, something that's underneath you.
Yeah, it's underneath you, and it's going to help you step up to another level. So people always say, you forgive so easy. Who said it was easy? I do it because I have to, because if I stay imprisoned, I'm not helping me. So if I keep replaying events that happened to me, or just let God handle it. Do you feel much better on the other side now that you have come through loving yourself, forgiving all who were involved? Do you feel better?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like a new person. I have peace and clarity now. I feel
Absolutely.
like I'm walking in my purpose. I feel like I can love myself and love others the way God wants me to. So it's
Amen.
a peace that, surpasses all understanding, that peace that, that God gives that the world can't give. So it's awesome, an awesome feeling.
Amen. And this just came to me, so I'm just going to say it how I heard it. I give you permission to love yourself. I don't know why we feel like we can't. I had to spend money one day, and it was a lot of money that I didn't want to spend. And when I say I didn't want to spend it, because I never spent a lot of money on me. Like, it was always my child or, a family member but this time it was about me. And I was like, who's going to give me permission to write this check? And God's like, I give you permission. And I'm like, he's like, so I give you permission to love yourself, to say kind things to yourself, to build yourself back up, and to say no when you need to say no. So last question is, If someone is watching this and they have not forgiven their father, they're the child. So we're going to go to the parent in a minute, but they're the child watching this, whether they're a child, meaning under 21-ish, or if they're a grown child, because we know we all have the child still living in us, right? So if they're the child, their father either left, maybe they have a rocky relationship. Can you encourage that person for us to mend that relationship? What would you say to them?
I would say talk to somebody. You know, if your father is not in your life, if he's left for whatever reason, or you don't have a relationship with him as a child, talk to someone, ask questions, talk to your parents, your mother, grandparents. You know, talk to somebody, or somebody you feel like you can trust. Just talk to them about what you're feeling, because one of the things that I know I've learned is that if we keep all of those emotions bottled up, then they're going to come out somehow. They're going to come out in a negative way. And we take those emotions everywhere we go. We take them to school with us. We take them to our relationships. We take them to the family reunion. We take them, to work with us. We take them with us everywhere, and they don't come out in a positive way. So it's so important that communication, that's one of the things that I wish I had have gotten early on. I didn't know to ask those questions when I was a child. I didn't know. I was a hyper child, jumping all over the place, ADHD. I mean, I was hyper, but I didn't know to ask, Mom, where's my father? Why is he not in our life? I didn't know that. And no one communicated that with me. I guess it was like, this is the grown folks conversation that we don't have to tell our kids about, but it hurts the child in the long run. So I would say, ask those questions, sit down and talk to somebody about what's going on, about, why he's not in your life.
Amen. And you have, again, we give you permission. You have permission to know, even if the answer is they don't know. You have permission to at least ask, so that you can find the peace to move on. And we talked about this off screen, and I'll tell you, the Bible does not promise you understanding. And a lot of people get stuck. Well, I don't understand why he left. I don't understand. And let me also say this: if your father did something ungodly to you, and I mean like molested, raped, tortured you in some kind of way, forgiveness does not mean re-entry of the relationship. So I want to make sure that even if you do find out who he is or where he is, does that mean you have to pick up the phone and be all hunky-dory tomorrow? That is not what that means. That means that the pain that you feel inside doesn't have to stay with you forever. The pain of what happened does not have to always be a bitter root of why did this happen. God doesn't promise us understanding. What he does promise us is peace that passes understanding. So imagine peace and understanding are in a race, and they're side by side, and eventually peace is going to surpass understanding. He promises peace, and peace is priceless. It feels way better than confusion, I can promise you that. And it actually feels, because sometimes I'll understand something and I'll still be upset about it. Have you ever felt that way? You're like, okay, now I understand, but I'm still mad. But when God gives you peace, that anger leaves. So now flip it to a parent, maybe a mother whose child is not in their life. Excuse me, a mother whose father is not in their child's life. Or maybe it is the father watching this and they do not have a relationship with their child. What kind of encouragement can you give them?
As a parent?
As a parent.
The parent to the child. One of the things that I can speak of how my situation with my daughter, her father, and they communicate now, but I always tell her, give her that choice. It's her choice whether or not she want to have a relationship with her father, even though he was, we didn't get along. And so I would just say, as a parent, give your child the opportunity to make that decision. As long as it's, the father is not abusing, like you said earlier, is not abusing or molesting or anything like that to the child, it should be up to the child to whether or not they choose to have a relationship with their father. And again, communication is key. just communicating with your child, sitting down, talking with her, just or him, and letting them know. You don't have to tell them everything, even if, just, give them that choice to decide if they want to be with, in a relationship with their father. Leave it up to them. And I wouldn't, we don't talk bad about that person,
Right.
even though he done something to us, and it wasn't right, it was disrespectful, but I never talk bad in front of my child about her father.
Amen.
I don't, I don't think that we should do those things, but again, communication is key.
Amen. And I'll end with, if you are a father who has abandoned their child for whatever reason, unless it's legal, if you have not been legally separated from your child and you just walked away, I want you to fast forward to your deathbed. I know it's a tough place to be, but I want you to fast forward to your deathbed or the moment of your death. And I want you to look at the people who are surrounding you. Is your child there?
Mm.
How do they feel about you? Have they been looking for you for 20 years and now they're seeing you on your deathbed, wondering what life could have been like if you would just have made the phone call? Just a phone call, just a text message, just a most children are looking for their parent, even if it's just to say, I met them. Maybe they don't want a relationship with you. Maybe they are going to be upset because remember, they're humans too. They have healing issues too. But it takes two to tango, whether that's male, female, female, female. It takes two people in a relationship to say, you know what, I want you. Well, I want you. Well, let's work this thing out so that we can come together. And think of your child on their deathbed, because in our world, children die too. Are you there? Or is your child looking around going, I'm dying and my daddy didn't even want to come see me?
Mm.
Imagine that. Imagine being on your deathbed and your child walking in saying, man, because that's Tracy's story. She said my daddy was dying and I didn't even get to tell him I love you. That's it. So imagine your child being on their deathbed or their moment of death. Some people don't get to the deathbed. They pass away in all kind of ways. So your child is passing away and you've been running from them your whole entire life for what? For shame, for anguish. For what reason do you have to not at least acknowledge this person as your true blood? This is your blood. This is somebody that you brought into this world. So thank you for watching. We went well over our hour, but I love Tracy.
Okay.
We've been as soon as I read her manuscript, was it 2 years probably now? 2 years ago, I know we would be joined at the hip. She's an amazing person. I'll let her end with her credentials of how you can. Have you already did that?
I
How
did
they can
about
reach you, your email, your
I didn't give email.
Okay, so give your email, your website if you have one, Facebook, how they can keep in contact with you.
Yes. So it's Tracy McCauley, excuse me, on Facebook. I also have a few pages, Conquerors United page, which it talks about a lot of domestic violence things to help build women up around domestic violence. And then I also have a author page, all Tracy McCauley. You can also email me at angelswithhope2015@gmail.com. I'm also on Instagram at twmccauley2010. And so again, my books can be purchased barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, Amazon Kindle. So yeah, that's how you can get in touch with me. And my website is actually down right now, so I won't give that information out, but you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn as well.
Okay, and her information should also be below this video. And we appreciate you watching today. Again, this is Father, I Forgive You. We want to pay special tribute to our fathers in a special way by just sharing with the world our stories of forgiveness. Stay tuned. I have about 2 to 3 more people that will be interviewed over this weekend. And hopefully you found some kind of peace to forgive your father and to pass on to your genealogy hopefully that's the right word, to your DNA, that forgiveness is for everybody, not just the people who you think deserve it, but even the people who don't deserve it. We'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day.